the jury in the federal criminal trial of entertainment mogul Sean Diddy Combs will begin a third day of deliberations. Jurors reached a partial verdict on Tuesday, coming to a unanimous agreement on 4 of the 5 charges against Combs. They agreed on 2 counts of sex trafficking and 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. But jurors were deadlocked on a verdict for the racketeering conspiracy count. That final charge carries the heaviest penalty, a maximum sentence of life in prison if convicted. Combs has pleaded not guilty to the charges. CNN's Kara Scannell has more details from New York.
The jury in the Sean Combs sex trafficking trial reached a partial verdict on Tuesday. The jury said they could not reach a unanimous decision on count 1. That's a racketeering conspiracy charge. But they did reach unanimous decisions on the sex trafficking counts and on the transportation to engage in prostitution. The scene inside the courtroom as this was unfolding, Combs was huddled around his attorneys. At one point, one of his lawyers walked over, took a copy of the handwritten note, and brought it over to Combs, with his lawyers circled around him tightly as they discussed what their next steps were. The judge asked them what they wanted to do, and both the prosecution and Combs' lawyers wanted the jurors to continue to deliberate. The judge brought them back in, instructed them that they should continue to deliberate, follow their duties and obligations, and the jurors said that they would be back at 9 a.m. on Wednesday to resume deliberations. If they're unable to make a decision on this, the judge could issue an Allen charge. That's a more serious instruction, urging them to try to bridge the gap and reach unanimity on this remaining count. But as for now, the jury will be back inside the courtroom on Wednesday morning to continue their deliberations. Kara Scannell, CNN, New York.
Joining me now to discuss the trial is Misty Maris, a defense and trial attorney. Misty, thank you very much for being here. You know, this is very complicated, and I'm hoping that you can walk us through this just one piece at a time. First, the fact that the jury has reached a verdict on 4 of the 5 counts, sex trafficking and transportation to engage in prostitution, 2 counts of each, after deliberating for some 12 hours. For starters, what should we make of that?
Well, good morning. It sounds like the jury has come to a unanimous decision on those 4 charges. Remember, until a verdict is read in open court, it is not a verdict. So what the jury did was send a note that indicated they were unanimous on those 4, but that they could not come to an agreement on count 1, which is RICO. So what we expect to happen today is for the jurors to come back into that deliberation room and get in there and get to work on RICO to see if they can come to a unanimous verdict. With respect to the others, those seem like they will result in either convictions or acquittals, because the jurors have said that they're unanimous, and the jurors need to be unanimous to either find guilty or not guilty. So that we're all on pins and needles, but nobody is on pins and needles more than Combs and his defense team last night.
So on this 5th charge of racketeering conspiracy that the jury is deadlocked on, just walk us through that a little bit more. I mean, explain exactly what that charge is, and what would the prosecution have needed to prove exactly to make a convincing case there? I mean, it is, as a reminder again, the charge that carries the heaviest penalty.
Yes, it carries the heaviest penalty, and it is by far the most complicated. When I heard that this is the one the jurors could not come to a unanimous decision on, I was not surprised. It's a very complicated charge, and it requires a showing that Combs and at least one other person conspired to engage in a criminal enterprise. So there has to be a conspiracy between at least 2 people and a criminal enterprise. And that criminal enterprise committed what's called predicate crimes. And the jury has to decide that at least 2 crimes were committed within the course of 10 years. Now that sounds like a mouthful. Keep in mind the jury has the jury instructions with them in the deliberation room. It's like 40 pages front and back, and a lot of it is dedicated to RICO, because not only do prosecutors have to prove the conspiracy and that an enterprise existed, but also that prosecutors proved at least 2 of those predicate crimes. They include kidnapping, bribery, arson, the sex trafficking, prostitution. Some of the charges are actually predicate crimes as well. So the jury has to be unanimous on at least 2 of those predicate crimes in order to convict. So all of that being said, it requires a lot of agreeing in order to get to a conviction. And the note yesterday said that they were in a deadlock, and so there were differing opinions on that particular charge. So whether that means they can't agree on the predicate crimes or they can't agree on the threshold matters like conspiracy or an enterprise, we don't know. But what we do know is the jury is going to get back to work in the deliberation room this morning.
Yeah, they're going to get back to work in just a few hours here. When a jury is deadlocked like that, and particularly on such a complicated charge as you were just laying out, take us inside that room. I mean, how do the people in that room potentially get to a unanimous decision? And also, I mean, how likely do you think that is?
I actually think in this case, it's very unlikely. I do not think that the jury is going to be able to come to consensus. Of course, we don't know. We're only opining because we're not in that room. Jury deliberations are secret. So the content of what they speak about, we are not allowed to know. Even the judge is not allowed to know. So what the jury is going to do is follow the instruction that the judge gave yesterday. He gave what we call it was a watered down version of what's called an Allen charge. And an Allen charge basically says to the jury, go into the deliberation room and keep an open mind. If you're in the minority of people, and in your opinion, listen to the majority. If you need to see more evidence, see more evidence. Try and come to a consensus, but do not give up your true convictions. So the language is very specific, not to be what's called coercive, not to feel like it's putting pressure on the jury, agree no matter what. The language is to go in there and really listen, keep an open mind, and see if you can do your duty as a juror and come to that unanimous decision. So that's what the jury is going to do today. I'm a little skeptical that we'll get there on this particular charge. I think that you could see a hang up on whether or not there's even a criminal enterprise, and you don't even get to the next elements then. But only time will tell, because the jurors are the ones who are truly in control at this point.
We'll be watching very closely today. Misty Maris, thank you so much.
Here now to discuss, Joey Jackson, CNN legal analyst and criminal defense attorney. Good to see you again, Joey. Joey, we don't yet know what the verdict is on those 4 counts, but I'm curious, from your experience and from what your gut tells you, is it likely that at least some of those charges are guilty now, considering that they are, at the time, deadlocked on that RICO count?
Yes, Sarah, good morning to you. It really does, and let me tell you why. I don't think it's speculation. I think it's predicated upon some reasoned judgment as we look there at the counts. Here's why I say this. You have this RICO charge, and we know what you have to prove for RICO. You have to prove that he was running a criminal enterprise, that he was engaging in some type of illegality with one or more parties in his organization, and that they were engaging in that over 10 years or more, and there were predicate bad acts like kidnapping, like arson, like bribery, like sex trafficking, etc. It would seem to me to be illogical if you have a camp there. Remember the note. They indicated that is the jury, that there's a camp that believes he's guilty of RICO, and there's a camp that believes he's not guilty of RICO. So it would seem to be logically inconsistent that you have a group of jurors who believe he's a racketeer, he's running a criminal enterprise, but with respect to the other charges, there's nothing to see here, and he's not guilty. Again, that's just my assessment. But if you read, in essence, what they're saying is you have a number of jurors who firmly believe he's guilty of RICO, and it would seem to me to be suggestive of the fact that they may also believe that he could be guilty of one or more of the other counts that exist.
Yeah, and I'm curious, what levers can the judge use to try to get the jury to agree on that last count, the RICO charge?
Yes, so what happens, Sarah, is that you have something called an Allen charge, which is the dynamite charge. And so jurors, look, they've sat there throughout this 7-week period of time, and in sitting there, what they end up doing is you formulate your opinions during the trial, of course, but you're not allowed to talk about them. So now comes the point where you're now deliberating and people are entrenched in their positions. With respect to the Allen charge, what you say to the jury is essentially this: ladies and gentlemen, there's no other juror in the world that could have been as conscientious as you. You've sat here throughout the testimony. You've heard the testimony. We're not asking that you change your views or your conscientious beliefs. What we're asking is that you reevaluate them in good faith and you try to reach a determination, because this case then would have to be retried again. So go back, do the best you possibly can. Don't sacrifice what you truly believe, but really attempt to reach a verdict. And that, of course, is the final step. And if they come back after that saying, Judge, we just can't do it, then the jury would be hung as to that specific count. And that specific count, which would be RICO, Sarah, could be retried if the government would want to do that.